two. They're in the heat of the game, it's clear. He's a champ when all else disappears. Rally the team with a wink and a cheer. He's the leader that everyone fears. Quickly, it's a real heater. Watch my friend, he's a locker room leader. In the chaos, he's the center, turning us into believers.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Sunday night. It is 7 p.m. and it is time for the Locker Room Breakdown. Yes, it is a new time slot. It is a new show. This is the Rasslin Recap, and we are going to take a look at everything that has happened in the week after WrestleMania. The surprises that showed up on Raw and on SmackDown. We're going to preview everything coming up tomorrow and this Friday. But if you're wondering how we came up with the name, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a massive, massive shout out to a couple of very, very dear friends of mine, friend of the show, friend of Turnbuckle Studios, Big Joe, and to my buddy, the owner of Energy Rock Radio, Fozzie McQueen, Mr. Ryan Carlella, for giving us permission to use the Rasslin Recap name. It is to honor the man who created the brand, the late Kyle Espenscheid. Thank you, brother. I hope I do you justice with this show. As I said, we are going to cover everything, and there was some good, there was some bad, there was some surprises that really, really caught us off guard. And ladies and gentlemen, we are here with you for the next hour and a little bit. I was intending for a 2-hour show. I was hoping to have a few extra guests here tonight, but the show must go on. Like I said, we are coming off of the week after WrestleMania. So these are two absolutely huge shows to deal with the fallout and set up the backlash. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there was a lot. Presh, good to see you. Thank you for stopping in, brother. Much appreciated. Always a pleasure to have you here. We're going to start with Raw, and we're going to recap everything. And it started off short, sweet, and simple. Something I absolutely love. And we started off with Obafemi. He came out and he delivered one line. The ruler has arrived. Dropped the mic and hit his pose. That was it. That was all. Like I said, short, sweet, to the point. He didn't need to do any more. Do I wish we could have gotten a new potential challenger for Obafemi? Yes. But at the same time, now it's a matter of what does WWE do with him from here? That is the question that I had going into WrestleMania. If Brock won, Brock didn't need a title. And I still think you could have given Oba a good solid rub and really helped him build. I think that Brock doing what he did in the Rumble, I think those interactions before WrestleMania really helped to solidify Oba. I don't think he needed the win at Mania. But that was what we got, and I'm not disappointed in that. But I think that Oba needs to establish really working with big men. He needs the Rusev to continue. He needs Gunther. I think Oba is now ahead of his time. If Obafemi would have been around in the days of The Undertaker, Kane, The Big Show, Mark Henry, Yokozuna, I think he would have been far better equipped to handle things in the WWE. Now, because he is the big man on campus, both figuratively and literally, it's going to be a lot harder for him to not be the dominant beast that he is and really learn what it's going to take on the main roster. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we got the final match of two tag teams, to be honest, as the team of Rhea Ripley and Io Sky took on the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane. This was a fantastic match, and we were left questioning, are we going to get the breakup of the Kabuki Warriors? Does Io maybe say something to Rhea, turn on her to go and rescue Kairi? This was a solid match. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say it again. I am not a huge fan of Asuka, but she is a Hall of Famer, to be certain. This was a great match. We didn't get a promo from Rhea. We didn't get any of that. What we got was a tag team clinic. Yes, it was controlled early and often by the Kabuki Warriors. And especially when we had Io Sky and Kairi Sane, two women who matched up in stature, technical ability, aerial ability, all of that. Once Rhea got the tag in, it was sort of game over from there. Io picked up the pinfall with the over the moonsault on Kairi Sane. What we didn't know was that it was going to be Kairi's last WWE match. Solid match, but where do we go now with nothing left to fight for between Asuka and Io? Now it's a matter of pride, ego. There's nothing left in this situation to fight for. And that is a real letdown. And I don't think we need to drag this out anymore, whether we go to Asuka and Io tomorrow, whether we go to Backlash with it. And I think that needs to now be the finality to this whole thing. I don't think there's any need to drag it out and carry it throughout the month of May. Again, solid match, nothing left to be said. After that, ladies and gentlemen, we heard from CM Punk in what was maybe his most genuine and heartfelt promo ever. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, CM Punk came out, he spoke about loss, but not so much the loss of the World Heavyweight Championship. He spoke about the loss of the producers behind the scenes. He spoke about the loss of his dog, Larry, the loss of his MMA trainer. But he said, I get up and I stay ready. You people have helped me grieve, and the World Heavyweight Championship helped me grieve. We were wondering, is he going to take some time off? Is he going to take some time away? No, he is going to stay ready, because you never know when a title opportunity is going to drop out of the sky. He was then interrupted by Cody Rhodes, who came out and said, you don't look like a loser. You don't look like someone who lost the title. Cody said, I do. I took everything Randy Orton had, and he then hit me with the thing that made him distinguished 15 years ago, the punt kick. Cody also told Punk, you've got a title shot waiting whenever you're ready for it. Punk looked at the title. Punk held the title and again said, I stay ready because you never know when the title shot is going to fall from the sky. I don't think we needed Cody's interruption, but we got it. It was very heartfelt. It was genuine. There was love. There was respect between the two men. And I was okay with the segment. Really seems like that's the way we're leaning now that Roman Reigns is our new World Heavyweight Championship or champion. Again, solid segment, but they do need to know when to scale back. As we go backstage, we see Javon Evans and Penta talking with Adam Pearce. And Javon says, you know what? I'm still coming for the Intercontinental Championship. But congratulations. Looked like we were going to set up for that match as Penta walked off when we got our first surprise of the night as Ethan Page made his Raw debut, walking into a segment with Javon Evans and Adam Pearce. And Ethan saying, yeah, I want the Intercontinental title. Look at what I have been doing my entire career. A match was made for later in the night with Ethan Page and Javon Evans. This was a match built on a little bit of history because they were still fairly recent rivals in NXT prior to Javon's call-up. And I liked it because it was a good way to introduce Ethan Page, and it was a way to do it with somebody he was comfortable working with instead of having to just jump into the fire. Yes, Ethan Page and Penta have worked together before in AEW, and I believe they may have wrestled a time or two during their time in TNA. Again, solid segment, well done to establish and introduce the newest member of the Raw locker room in Ethan Page. After that, we are shown Royce Keys, who is sitting in attendance in Las Vegas, the man who had won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on SmackDown prior to WrestleMania. I don't know that I am a big fan of SmackDown superstars being introduced over on Raw. I get it, but I don't think it was needed unless you were going to put Royce Keys in a match. And again, there was just no need for it. Again, Royce Keys and Oba Femi would be another great big man powerhouse matchup. And I'm not just using powerhouse as a pun because Royce was once powerhouse Hobbs. So we move on to the aforementioned match of Ethan Page and Javon Evans. Javon showing the injuries, showing the wear and tear from the ladder match at WrestleMania when he went 1-on-5 against Penta, Dragon Lee, JD McDonough, Rusev, and Rey Mysterio. You could see the kinesio tape. You could see everything there trying to keep Javon Evans together. Javon, of course, able to deliver a solid match. We got a little bit of interference from Rusev, but it was Javon who took the fight to him instead of allowing it to be the other way and not allowing the disqualification, which allowed Ethan Page to hit the twisted grin in another solid match. Ethan Page picked up the victory in his Raw debut, and I am here for it. Does this cement Ethan Page, ladies and gentlemen, as a true number one contender for the Intercontinental Championship, or do we need a little bit more from Ethan before we can put him into that? After Ethan picked up the match, he left the ring as Rusev came in to lay out Javon Evans. Now, Ethan stuck around the ringside area during this beatdown until Penta came out to make the save. Rusev laid him out. Ethan Page jumped back in and joined in on the attack with Rusev instead of going after him. And even Rusev gave him a look, and Ethan's like, okay, I'm backing off. I'm backing out. I'm good to go. And he left. So no physicality between Ethan Page and Rusev. So what does that mean for tomorrow? We're going to find out in just a little while when we hit the preview portion for tomorrow night's Monday Night Raw. Next up, we had the championship celebration for the greatest Royal Rumble winner and the greatest women's world heavyweight champion of all time, Liv Morgan, who came out flanked by Dom, by JD, by Raquel, and Roxanne the Judgment Day. And she thanked them. She gave full credit where it was due to them, calling them her rock, her family, and how much they've supported her and how much that truly means to her. This is where we got our second surprise of the night. And I wasn't sure when I heard the music hit as to who it was, but it was the debut of Sol Ruca. And Sol came out saying, Liv, congratulations. And she thanked Liv for her contributions and even credited Liv with being an inspiration to her. She hyped Liv up. She put Liv over. Liv thanked her for the kind words and said, I'm going to put this as nicely as possible. Get out of my ring. It led to some back and forth, which led to Adam Pearce coming out and making the match Liv Morgan versus Sol Ruca. It was a non-title match. And ladies, did you ever deliver? This was a back and forth, counter for counter, almost a catch as catch can match. This match actually blew Liv and Stephanie from WrestleMania out of the water. This was an incredible match. Liv did pick up the win thanks to Zarya coming out and laying out Sol Ruca at ringside. But Sol was able to get in her offense, show us what she is capable of and what she is going to bring to the women's division on Raw. Liv, in the end, did pick up the victory, hitting Oblivion after Sol had been laid out by Zarya outside, as those two had to finish their business this past Tuesday on NXT. Then we got Paige and the Bellas again being shown in the crowd at ringside. Guys, WWE, you have to do better. These are your women's tag team champions. And yes, Paige was there because Nikki Bella couldn't go at WrestleMania. But this needed to be something better than putting your women's tag team champions in the crowd. You could have had them sitting at ringside, sitting beside the commentary desk, saying they were looking to see who could potentially be there. You could have had them on commentary, anything, but not in the crowd. These are titles. These are champions, ladies and gentlemen. WWE, you needed to do better. Then we hear from the Vision. And ladies and gentlemen, this segment, I am going to say this: WWE Universe, you made your voices heard. You brought it. We loved it. Paul Heyman came out, and yes, he was getting booed. He said, I had a speech all prepared, but he was reeling from what happened at WrestleMania when Brock Lesnar left his boots, his socks, and his gloves in the ring and walked up the ramp at WrestleMania. And so Paul Heyman decided to turn the mic over to Logan Paul, who got Dom Mysterio heat. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Logan Paul could not get a word out without the crowd going insane and booing him. Logan Paul eventually got out the fact that he is tired of these outsiders and YouTubers like I Show Speed coming into their business and thinking that they can do what we can do. And I love this character direction for Logan Paul because he is literally pointing the finger at himself. Because he came in and does what we can do. Then, Paul Heyman got the mic back and he introduced the returning Braun Breaker, who came out and told Seth freaking Rollins, look, I cut you in half. I cut your match short. And I ruined your match with Gunther. At this point, we got the appearance of Seth Rollins, and I was wondering if we were going to get it or if Seth was going to take the night off because of being so banged up from that match with Gunther and what happened with Braun Breaker. Seth proceeded to lay out Braun. Seth even cut Braun open with a stiff stiff kick. But we got that next spear from Braun Breaker. We had the Vision proceed to lay waste to Seth Rollins until we got the return of the Street Profits to Raw. This was the third big surprise, and I think it seriously bolsters the Raw tag team division. The Street Profits came out to help fight off the Vision, took the battle to Logan Paul and to Austin Theory, got them out of the ring. Tez hit his huge dive over the top. We've got the Street Profits back. Multiple levels to fight for the Vision now. Is there somebody else that can step in to truly give them the numbers advantage? Do we go to a 6-man tag soon with Seth and the Profits versus the Vision? Do we go to a tag title match? There's a lot of different ways we can play this out, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of moving parts. We move on, ladies and gentlemen, to a match featuring former brothers and former tag team champions as Finn Balor went one-on-one with JD McDonough. Again, this was that teacher versus student, former brethren in the Judgment Day, former tag team champions, former tag team partners. This was huge. This was a fantastic match. Again, ladies and gentlemen, these two guys can absolutely bring it each and every time they're out there. JD, again, coming out taped up after being banged up in that ladder match, eating that destroyer on the ladder from Penta. It was brutal. However, after Finn won the match, he was attacked. He was laid out again by Dom Mysterio, who is going to want a rematch because he had signed on to face Finn Balor at WrestleMania, not the Demon. And then, of course, that match wound up becoming a street fight. So now we're going to, I think, get Dom wanting this match in his own style. So are we going to go to a one-on-one? Are we going to go to a Falls Count Anywhere? Do we bring the match down to AAA and get the AAA Mega Championship there? I know Mr. Best would absolutely love to see that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more segment to cover from Raw before we move on to the preview. So let's do that right now, as we heard from our new World Heavyweight Champion, Roman Reigns. As he arrived to the arena and was walking to Gorilla to head out to the ring, the Usos were there. They had the Raiders jerseys on with their number 42 and Uso here. Jay had his on backwards. Jimmy had his on right. Was this a little bit of foreshadowing? Roman, when he got to the ring, asked the crowd to acknowledge him as always, but then said to the Usos, look, I miss this. I miss having your complete trust. I miss having your backing. I'm not going to ask you to serve me. Jay, you are main event Jay Uso. You are the Yeet Man. And everything happened. Both men stood in their respective positions in the ring, raised their ones to the sky, and even had said, they the twos, we the ones. Does this put the bloodline back together? Does that now instill the Usos back into the tag team title picture? Or what were we going to get? And I think the jerseys were a little bit of a foreshadow, because then we heard the music of the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu on Raw. This was not something we were expecting to see, but it was a little bit intriguing. And what did Jacob have to say? He wasn't there to acknowledge Roman, but he said he wanted what Roman had. He wasn't there to be the tribal chief, but he wanted the money. He wanted better schools for his kids, better food on his family's plates. Roman said, Jacob, I want that for you too. So let's look at it. Let's say you can beat me. You get all of that. But let's look at the flip side. What if you don't? Are you willing to acknowledge me? Jacob had asked for a title match at Backlash. Roman said, I will see you next Monday to answer your question. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not saying no. I'll see you next Monday. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Raw came to a close. Again, a solid segment. Is this signaling a new bloodline? Is this the Usos going to turn on Roman and go with Jacob? Is this another faction inside of the faction? You've already got the MFTs on SmackDown. Are we getting the bloodline back? Are we going to a new bloodline thing? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. What you can do is tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern with us on the Raw Patrol. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to cover what's coming up tomorrow in just a moment. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take a look at just how you can help us.
A Turnbuckle affiliation program is looking for more people. If you have passion level for pro wrestling, sports, video games, or something else, then Turnbuckle Studios is the place to be. If you have ever wanted to pursue content creation and want to join our team, then we would love to have you. Check out turnbucklestudios.org or contact us by email today, because your future is now, and we want you to tap in.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you have ever wanted your break in podcasting, content creation, a potential collaboration, or just to help us out behind the scenes, turnbucklestudios.org is your home for the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program. Hit that join button. Send us your credentials by email. Tell us how you believe you can help us, how you think we can help you. We will sit down as a collective and find the right fit. All of that and more at turnbucklestudios.org. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up tomorrow on Monday Night Raw, we are going to get an action-packed show. As we just touched on, we are going to get Roman Reigns' answer to Jacob Fatu. Where do we go with that? What do we take from this? And is this something that is going to build out from Backlash? Is this something that is going to carry through May, through Clash in Italy? Or is this a one-time thing? Does Jacob end up acknowledging Roman and we go nowhere with it? Very, very intriguing. We are going to get another debut on Raw, because in concert for his first time since officially joining Raw, the man we had all believed and presumed was going to join SmackDown, Joe Hendry will be in concert. And what happens there? Who do we hear from? Is that another place for Ethan Page to interrupt? Do we get a new surprise from NXT? Do we get Seth Rollins? There are a lot of questions to be answered with that. What is going to happen with Joe Hendry? And is that how we open the show? No. We are going to open the show with Seth freaking Rollins. He is going to come out, I'm sure, address Braun Breaker, address the Vision. Is he going to acknowledge or address the Street Profits and what they did? Where do we go? Are we going to get that potential 6-man tag team match built for tomorrow night? Again, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know. Anything can happen. This is now I'm going to call it now the month after Mania, because we know that there is going to be a lot of moving parts, whether it's transfers from Raw to SmackDown or vice versa, whether it's call-ups from NXT. What could we potentially see in that regard? We are going to hear from our new Women's Intercontinental Champion, Becky Lynch. Yes, Becky won her set piece back at WrestleMania, defeating AJ Lee. Did that put finality on that rivalry? I hope so, but I don't think so. This was a set situation, ladies and gentlemen, that truly, truly needed finality to it. And the only way I think you were going to get that finality was had AJ won. But we know that WrestleMania is Becky's home. And Becky always performs when the lights are brightest. Who's going to step up to issue the challenge? Again, do we get another call-up from NXT? Does Sol Ruca step to Becky Lynch now to really establish herself? We've seen her go after Liv Morgan. Is Becky Lynch the next one on the list for Sol Ruca? Do we get somebody from Becky's past? A former champion in her own right, potentially a Lyra Valkyria, a Bayley. No, sorry. Lyra and Bayley have a tag team match tomorrow night, as they will take on the Judgment Day's Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez with Liv Morgan in their corner. Do they get Stephanie Vaquer to back them up? Do they have somebody else in mind? We talked earlier about the Io Sky direction with Asuka and there being nothing on the line. Do you now have to shift that focus of a women's tag team breakup to either of these two teams, Raquel and Roxanne or Bayley and Lyra? And I'm going to say yes. But I think if you are going to do that, you have to go to Bayley and Lyra. Now that you have the women's championship back in the Judgment Day, I think that either getting Raquel and Roxanne the women's tag titles needs to be front and center for them, or do you put one of them to challenge for the women's Intercontinental Championship if they don't get the tag team title job? Are we going to hear from our women's tag team champions in this situation, or are they going to sit in the crowd again? Ladies and gentlemen, all of these questions can get answered tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on Netflix. But we also have one more match to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, as the Intercontinental Championship will be defended, and it will be Penta defending against Rusev. Who's going to come out with the Intercontinental Championship? I'm going to say this. I do believe Rusev. Rusev, I think, needs not only the victory, but Rusev needs the title. Rusev needs some credibility, and I think his booking over the past year has really, really been lacking, unfortunately. And I hate to say that because I love Rusev. Penta was a surprise to win the Intercontinental Championship and retain it at WrestleMania. But are we going to get interference? Does Javon Evans come out and interfere? Does Ethan Page come out and interfere? Do we get Ray? Do we get Dragon Lee? Do we get JD? What are we going to do with all of these? Where do we go with Finn and Penta and what happened last week? Where do we go with Io and Asuka? Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many unanswered questions as we get ready to head in to Monday Night Raw tomorrow night. And ladies and gentlemen, we do want you to stay tuned for all of our weekly programming here at the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program and Turnbuckle Studios.
Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program bring you the week of streams. All times are in Eastern Time. Monday night we are on call as the Raw Patrol is on duty at 8 p.m. Tuesday brings you the flagship show, Turnbuckle Talk, at 8:05 p.m. Wednesday we play games with the PlayStation Showcase at 8 p.m. Thursdays we roam the jungle with the Boar's Nest at 9 p.m. Friday we invite you to come for a ride with the SmackDown Security Detail at 8 p.m. The weekend brings you Saturday Night Gaming at 8 p.m. On Sunday, be sure to catch the Chris Parrish podcast at 12:15 p.m. And later in the day, the Locker Room presents Rasslin Recap delivers at 7 p.m. Always be aware that weekend shows can vary in times, as the PLE Patrol and other watch party streams are always a must-see. Be part of the shows and join the chat every day and watch all of the latest episodes on turnbucklestudios.org/shows. And please do not forget to drop a like, follow, and to subscribe to all of our channels, and when the time is right, all you have to do is tap in.
And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is all of our weekly programming for you here each and every night of the week at Turnbuckle Studios. And we want you to meet the team and watch our shows. So head on over to turnbucklestudios.org, your home for the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program. Go to the host section, click on each of our individual links. Myself, Chris Best, Chris Parrish, Bubba Duke, Logan Thompson, and Carl Carafel. Get all of our socials and watch our latest weekly live episodic shows right there. All of that and more, turnbucklestudios.org. On SmackDown, ladies and gentlemen, very, very intriguing. Now, due to work commitments, I always miss the first 20 minutes, half an hour of SmackDown, which is really, really difficult for me, but I always get caught up. And we had Jacob Fatu come out to the ring to address the MFTs. But he did have backup from the Usos, who were there on instruction from Roman Reigns to get the situation under control with Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu did super kick Tama Tonga as he refused help from Solo Sikoa and the Usos after challenging Roman. Everybody trying to get back in Jacob's head, trying to get him to fall in line. Jacob is a lone Samoan werewolf, and I don't think he needs or wants anybody at his side anymore. But would that come back to bite Jacob Fatu in the rear end a little bit later on in SmackDown? We move on to a title that I think should have been defended at WrestleMania against a contender in the Women's US Championship, as Julia was defending against a woman who probably shouldn't have had the title shot. She just happened to win what was a last-minute #1 contenders match the previous week. Tiffany Stratton beating Jordynne Grace. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a fantastic match for something that was seemingly pulled out of a hat. And I'm going to say it. I think it was pulled out of a hat. What had Tiffany done? Tiffany went from WrestleMania the year before with Charlotte Flair to not being on the show, not being able to really establish any momentum since her return from her injuries at the hands of Jade Cargill. And yet somehow she is your #1 contender. And ladies and gentlemen, I am going to say this. WWE has been doing Jordynne Grace dirty. I'm going to say it. Jordan's run in NXT really fell flat. They didn't know what to do with her other than just have her work these young up-and-comers. She didn't really get over. She didn't get she had opportunities, but they never pulled the trigger on putting a belt on her. Same thing, her match with Jade Cargill a few weeks ago. And then a #1 contenders match for two women who didn't deserve a #1 contenders match. I will say it, like I said, WWE has done Jordynne Grace dirty. But Tiffany Stratton and Julia, again, counter for counter, hold for hold, move for move, the women stepped up and brought it. Again, a match really longer than anything we saw on the WrestleMania card. WrestleMania became more about the effects and the entrances than it did about the matches. And TKO, do better. I am going to put it right out there. Do better. But Tiffany Stratton defeated Julia to become your new Women's United States champion. And where do we go from here? Because are we going to go back to Chelsea Green in that? Are you going to go to either member of the Irresistible Forces challenging? Who's there to step up? Are you going to break up Kiana James and Julia? I think they have a solid thing going. I absolutely love what they have going. Do you go to Kiana James? Do you bring in somebody else to join that group to potentially challenge Tiffany Stratton? Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm finding that the Women's US Championship has really lost direction, and it sucks. We need that direction. Now, Julia had a much better second run with it, and I'll give her credit. But, again, I don't want to say it's being used as a set piece, but I think in this situation, unless you're going to turn Tiffany heel, I don't want it to go the way of the Women's Intercontinental Championship and become a piece of Becky's and become an aesthetic piece. Again, TKO, WWE Creative, you need to do better. Would this be a situation where you could bring AJ Lee to SmackDown to challenge for the title? I think that, again, that's really just jumping the gun and making a lateral move for AJ Lee. And I don't know if that's going to be a good move or really beneficial for either her or Tiffany Stratton. Is this a case where you could bring up Azaria from NXT to challenge for it? Is this a place where you could bring up somebody else? Speaking of somebody else, 3 women did make an impact because we heard from our new women's tag team champions on SmackDown after they were sitting in the crowd on Raw. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we heard from Paige and Brie Bella. Nikki was not there and not conspicuous by her absence because of her ankle injury and the fact that she is recovering from having had surgery. Paige said, SmackDown, this is still my house. And they were interrupted by Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, which led to a tag team match, non-title. So I'm going to give WWE credit because they're not just trying to force the titles on the line in every situation. And I think it was great that you were going to have Charlotte and Alexa earn it, though I think that they should have had an opportunity by now, outside of WrestleMania, to have regained those tag team championships. But we got a massive impact made. As in our first surprise, we had 3 women come in and send a message to the SmackDown Women's Division. Jacy Jane, Lainey Reed, Fallon Henley, Fatal Influence laid waste to all 4 of these women. And we were excited, ladies and gentlemen. We were excited. This was something that was needed. This is a brilliant refresh because now you've got a group that can counter the 3 women of the Judgment Day over on Raw. Can you build to a Judgment Day versus Fatal Influence collision course at Survivor Series? Can you build to a 6-woman tag at SummerSlam? Absolutely. And I am here for it. Whether Fatal Influence or the Judgment Day get the women's tag team titles before SummerSlam Survivor Series, you can build to all of those options. We heard from Cody Rhodes. He talked about his history with Randy Orton. He talked about being QB1. He talked about being your undisputed champion. In the end, it was a very simple message, no interruptions. He used the basic cliche, though. I'm not hard to find. I'm the guy with the belt. Come and get me. He was not interrupted by anybody. He did not get the next challenger coming down. He did not have Pat McAfee to come at him. Nobody. We didn't hear from CM Punk, which was what we were kind of waiting for. But I am okay with that. I am okay with that decision. Does this become a situation of Cody can now dictate control what he does this become a situation where Cody can still turn heel as the champion? And I believe he could. Will he? It's really, really hard to say. I think it's going to depend really on who his next true contender is. We heard from Rhea Ripley, who came out and said, who's next? Basically, she came out asking for her next challenger. Again, she is interrupted by fatal influence. And Rhea said, hey, you want to run the numbers game? I've just dealt with the numbers game from Jade Cargill. And I came out on top. So shoot your shot, do your thing. Nick Aldis came out and made a match saying, JC, Fatal Influence, welcome to the show. And welcome to your debut. And he made JC Jane versus Rhea Ripley in what was a fantastic match. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it took a long, long time for JC Jane to grow on me, but over the past year, she really has. Because we don't really do a lot of NXT coverage here, we don't get to discuss her nearly enough. But she stepped up. She delivered. She really, truly made an impact. And as Rhea was going for the Riptide, of course, Fatal Influence interfered, beat her down, and Rhea had nobody to come out and make the save because Io wasn't there. But she didn't have Jade and her minions coming after her either. We wondered if any of the tag teams from earlier on that had taken the beat down were going to come out. They did not. But we come back from the commercial and we see Rhea walking into the trainer's room as the trainer has just finished with Charlotte and Alexa. And she's staring Rhea down. Rhea asks, do we have a problem? Charlotte says, yeah, Fatal Influence. And then says, you know, next week I'm going one-on-one with JC Jane and I'm going to get the job done, unlike some people. And Alexa Bliss says, no, Rhea, it's not you. That's just how she is. Are we going to build to that Rhea versus Charlotte? Are we building then to the idea of a Charlotte and Alexa split? And I really, really hope not. I really like this pairing of Charlotte and Alexa. I'm really liking what Charlotte is doing, who she is becoming in this character, and what she can deliver. I am loving this. We also had a World Tag Team Championship match as R-Truth and Damian Priest defended against JC Mateo and Tonga Loa of the MFTs. And this was a very, very intriguing match. This went back and forth. I thought we were going to have new tag team champions. I thought, because of all of the news that came out Friday pre-SmackDown, because we had a solid direction now for the MFTs, that now you can go back, you can put the belts on them. But we didn't do that. And I know that we were all speaking here about wanting Truth and Priest to keep the titles for a little while, and we got that. And I'm not disappointed in it. But now, again, WWE, you need to do better. You've established the MFTs on SmackDown as your number one faction. You cut the Wyatts. So now you have to do something, right? Because you do not want to split the MFTs now that you've just made them as big as they are. We heard from Trick Williams, our new U.S. champion, after beating Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. He came out with Little Yachty again, his hype man, and he came out with the Gingerbread Man as he was talking trash about Sami Zayn. And as he was celebrating afterwards, the Gingerbread Man took the candy cane and laid out Little Yachty. And then proceeded to lay out Trick Williams. He then took off the mask to reveal himself to be Sami Zayn to a chorus of boos. And all Sami's done is listen to what Randy told him, listen to what Cody told him. Take advantage of the situation. When it was Aleister Black, when it was Karrion Kross, everybody's cheering him because they're the heels. But now that he's listening to Cody and Randy, he's getting booed because they're the baby faces, although Randy is in that transitional role. Come on, guys, give me a break. One word describes us as a WWE universe, and I am going to use that word, made famous by Bryan Danielson when he was Daniel Bryan, and that is fickle. We as fans are fickle. Yes, we have the right to choose who we cheer, who we boo. But ladies and gentlemen, all Sami did was listen. All he did was listen. All he did was follow advice given to him by his peers. And we're going to castrate him for that? I think not. Very, very interesting story played out at Manor Marmiz. That's right, at the Miz's home. We saw Danhausen go and knock on the door. Miz was looking for him, couldn't find him. All of a sudden, Danhausen was just there right behind him. And they were getting ready for a match. So we had to show what built up to it. Miz, being the polite host, told Danhausen to leave, get out of his house. And he went back and found Danhausen in his pool. Told Danhausen to get out of his pool. Danhausen got out, stepped into the next pool, and said, "No, you told me to get out of that pool. Now I'm in this pool." Miz charged at him and went face first into the water. We then saw Danhausen playing with Miz's golf equipment. Took a slammy. And as he was leaving, he came face to face with Maurice. Miz went to throw something at Danhausen, looked like chocolate powder, and got Maurice in the face, and they both looked at each other. Danhausen. Fantastic segment. The Miz, R-Truth, Danhausen, pure comedy gold. And if you can't get behind The Miz doing what he does, there is something wrong. The Miz is absolutely awesome. And at that point, we did see Danhausen leave on Miz and Maurice's daughter's bike. Instead of taking, looks at the Cybertruck and says, "Oh, a spaceship." We then go to The Miz versus Danhausen in the ring. And again, great match. Great match. Kit Wilson out there with The Miz, providing a distraction. And as they're both in the ring on the one side looking at the crowd, Danhausen does his "You Are Cursed." The pyro shoots off, allowing Danhausen to hit the schoolboy and pick up the win. Solid chemistry between all of these individuals, and I love it. Danhausen is now undefeated on SmackDown at 2-0, beating The Miz and Kit Wilson. Let's get this man a shot at Trick Williams in the U.S. Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our main event of the night. We get Solo Sikoa taking on Jacob Fatu. A match we've seen a few times before, and Jacob, who is winless against Solo. Like I said, you've established the MFTs as the dominant faction. Does that hold true? As Jacob is making his way to the ring, we hear the Usos say, "We got your back." And Jacob says, No, I got this. I don't need you guys to have my back. Jacob went out. Now, Solo came out with all of the MFTs behind him, minus Talatonga, who he had given the night off to. This, ladies and gentlemen, I got to go match of the night. It was absolutely fantastic, though there was nothing that was really a letdown on SmackDown this week from the previous. This was, again, back and forth, hard hitting. The old saying of never headbutt a Samoan. These Samoans can hurt each other, hurt themselves and hurt each other with headbutts. This was a fantastic match. We got a little bit of distraction from the MFTs. Jimmy and Jay made their way to the top of the ramp. They didn't do anything. They didn't make their way down because Jacob told them, no, stay back there. I don't want this. They did. They respected his wishes. In the end, Jacob picks up the win, but proceeds to get beaten down by all of the MFTs. However, he manages to avoid one, gets a chair, and then lays waste to them, leaves them all down and out in the ring, and said, "Man, I don't need you. You tell Roman I'll see him Monday." And the Usos were still sitting at the top of the entrance ramp. So, what is Roman's answer going to be on Monday? I think we know it's going to be a yes. Is it going to be title versus acknowledgement? We will have to wait until Monday to find out that answer. But what's going to happen next Friday? Ladies and gentlemen, find out right after this visit and checking out our shop.
The Turnbuckle Studios store is open for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the merch and represent the best from the shows you watch on a weekly basis. Multiple styles to choose from with over 10 products available. Don't get left out and pick up all your favorites today. Find us at turnbucklestudios.org.
And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Turnbucklestudios.org is your home for the Turnbuckle Affiliation program. And now we want you to head on over to our shop. Support your favorite shows and your favorite broadcasters. Wear what we wear. And ladies and gentlemen, all of those proceeds come back into our studios to bring you a better experience. So, ladies and gentlemen, this coming Friday, we are going to get Charlotte Flair versus JC Jane. That much we know. What's going to happen in that match? Will Alexa Bliss and Rhea Ripley make their presence felt to counter Fatal Influence? Will Paige and Brie Bella step up as a countermeasure? A lot can happen in that match. Do we establish true contenders to Paige and Brie? It's going to be very, very interesting. We also had a vignette this past Friday on SmackDown. Coming soon, we are going to get Blake Monroe. Maybe a little bit rushed because I think she should have held the NXT Women's Championship, especially because NXT needs some credible talent right now. But we also found out that debuting this Friday will be Ricky Saints. And I love it. I love it. Who does he step up to? Who is he going to face? Are we going to see a reunion of him with Royce Keys? Are we going to see him step to Trick Willie? Are we going to see him call out Sami Zayn? Are we going to see him step to his buddy Cody? It's very, very interesting, very, very intriguing to see where we go from here. But ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is all that we know of for SmackDown this coming Friday. So I can't give you anything more to preview. I wish I could. But what we can only speculate. And I wonder if we're going to get some players moving from Raw over to SmackDown or from SmackDown to Raw this coming week as we build to Backlash, as we build to Saturday night's main event, and as we build to Clash in Italy, all coming up through the month of May. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute ball bringing you this show, covering everything between both shows. Thank you all for joining me. And ladies and gentlemen, from all of us here at the Locker Room and Turnbuckle Studios, to those of you out there, wherever you are, please remember, the world is better with you in it. From all of us here, good night, good luck. We out.
You'll find love bad hockey teams can't deny. His best friend is just a hand so true, loyal until his friend goes number 2. They're in the heat of the game, it's clear. He's a champ when all else disappears. Rally the team with a wink and a cheer. He's the leader that everyone fears. Quickly, it's a real heater. Watch my friend, he's a locker room leader.